Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Pisces, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of September 2024. I hope you are well. I'm using the Pagan Otherworlds deck for you today. Just before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That is via the first link in the description box. Second link in the description box is to my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix over on the Circle platform. You can get access to all of the extended content, so for your sun, your moon or your ascendant or whatever, for no extra cost beyond that of the membership fee. So if that sounds like it might be something that is of interest to you, you know what to do with that link. Right, let's flip ourselves around. I'll move my lighter out of shot and see what's going on with you. Could I have 3 cards for Pisces, please? We have the Ace of Cups showing up sideways. Current energy for Pisces, please. Got a couple here. We've got the 5 of Wands and we've got the Queen of Swords. And what about what's coming towards Pisces, please? Okay. It's coming towards Pisces. Good Lord. It is the Fool. Right. At the bottom of the deck we have the Hermit, and I don't think that's going to come as much of a surprise to anyone. Last month we were talking about the cosmic washing machine, right? How you seem to be taking everything in and kind of cleaning it, sluicing it, all that sort of stuff. That, by its very nature, I think would imply that there's a level of sensitivity that you're feeling now that is almost... It would find the modern day humdrum of life, but also those kind of not as meaningful interactions to be a little bit obnoxious to your energy at the moment. So I would imagine that actually there's a little bit more time on your own, doing your own thing, as we would see in the Hermit. I want to pull out some... interesting, there's the Ace of Cups as well there. I'd like to pull out some clarifiers before I say any more, because I do really feel like something's on the turn here for you. Not necessarily in a bad way at all, but let's have a look. Tell me about the Ace of Cups on its side. Why is that here for Pisces, please? 7 of Pentacles. We've got the Page of Wands in reverse, and we also have the Magician in reverse. Tell me about the 5 of Wands and the Queen of Swords, please. We have the World and we have the Hierophant. Let's get one more for that, because we've got a double card there. Okay, that one wanted to come out. The Sun. Wonderful. Always a bit of Leo magic sprinkled in amongst yours, in your readings, generally speaking. Tell me about the Fool, please. Why is this here for? Oh, okay, Pisces. We have the 8 of Pentacles and we have the King of Wands. Something is definitely on the turn here. But before it can turn, something must end. And we see that here in the 10 of Swords at the bottom of the deck. I mean, we were already getting an implication of that with the Ace of Cups on its side. And that 7 of Pentacles, Page of Wands, Magician combination that we see in your recent past. Now, when I say recent past, what I mean by that is it could be this morning when you got out of bed, and it could be as far back as 6 weeks ago from this point here. But it's something that's been kind of brewing in this time frame. Some of you will move faster, some of you will be slower, some of you, you know, it is what it is. You would apply it as it resonates to you. The Ace of Cups, to be clear, in the tarot, it is not the cup itself that is representative of all of those things that we talk about, right? Emotions, forgiveness, compassion, all this sort of stuff. It is actually the water that is within the cup. The cup is simply the vessel that holds it. And this becomes important when the cups are doing anything other than standing upright, because obviously they cannot fulfill their function to hold the thing that they're supposed to be, you know, holding, keeping safe. You see it in the 8 of Cups sometimes, where cups are stacked upside down or cups are broken, depending on the deck of cards that you're looking at. But whenever something is failing to stand up quite the way that we would want it to, what happens is the emotion starts to run out of that. And what's quite clear to me here is that, and there's 2 different routes that this is taking. Either some of you have realised you're in a situation that is not is not an alignment with a sense of self that is healthy, looking after oneself and all that sort of thing. Or there's been some sort of breakdown in something that you've been emotionally engaged with, where now you're looking at it and you're going, do you know what, this isn't actually what I thought it was, this isn't actually giving me what I need, and as a matter of self-respect, I must walk away from it. So I guess both interpretations kind of circle around to the same outcome, because it's not yet fully upside down, it's not drained of everything that it has. There's something still there in this situation, whether it be between you and a significant other, you and a family member, you and a friend, even business partnerships and stuff like that, right? Something that you have, that there's been some emotion from you invested into it, and because you're Pisces, a lot of your emotion gets invested into everything that you touch. But here, Seven of Pentacles is saying there's something wrong here. It's not really working out. It's not really doing it for me. I don't really want to go any further with this. I'm not looking to expand this in any kind of meaningful way. And actually, I feel like my ability to be able to create my own personal manage is being somehow stymied by my involvement in this situation. You know, these cards on their own speak of something that is certainly tipping towards an end. To see the Ten of Swords at the bottom of the deck here is a confirmation of that. When we combine it with the Hermit, what we've got is a situation where you are being asked to look within and see if the situation that you're involved with, and you know, to be clear, if I wasn't already a second ago, we're not necessarily talking about intimate, romantic, sexual relationships. We can be talking about any aspect of your life here where you do not feel like you are treating yourself with the integrity that you deserve, right? There's something costing you about this. It could be a work situation, it could be where you're spending your time, it could be anything. Like I said, everything that Pisces touches has some emotion in there somewhere. And because you've been very busy with this cosmic washing machine thing, I think perhaps you got much more focused on the processing for other people, because you can and you willingly do it. You had not necessarily considered whether you should do this in every single situation that you have your fingers lightly resting upon. The Page of Wands in reverse for me feels like something about this situation is a bit of a non-starter. It's possible that it had all sorts of potential at one point, but what is really clear here is that the potential is not being realized. Magician in reverse is you know, the literal creative act. It's like taking pure potential and transmuting it, you know, bringing all the energy together to create a thing. It's not happening. And this Seven of Pentacles goes, no, I'm not really sure that this is something I want to be involved in anymore. Could be a romantic relationship, but it could be talking symbolically about anything that's going on in your life. There's doubt creeping in here. Don't know if I should do this anymore. And that's really, really good, because it does mean that you are thinking about yourself properly in the way that you should do. Now, when we move into your current energy, we've got the Five of Wands and we've got the Queen of Swords. And this, too, I find fascinating. Do you know what? Like, fuck, I find everything fascinating. It's kind of cool. To surround yourself with fascinating things and fascinating people and fascinating situations. But I, you know, violently overuse that word. But it's genuine. It fits, you know. What's important, I think, about where you are finding yourself right now, as I would say relatively conflicted as it is that you have all of this major arcana underneath here that is supporting you. Now, on the face of it, it feels like, you know, this is a situation that you have to deal with that feels, you know, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's kind of like the day-to-day stuff. You see right across here, certainly up to here, we don't have any major arcana, right? So we've got the surface, and then we've got what's going on underneath. So surface here, oh, I'm not sure that this is for my highest good. Underneath here, it's kind of a do you know what, it actually fucking isn't. This is a non-starter. This is not something that I want to grow and evolve and create from. And in fact, like I said, I feel like I'm being in some way prevented from being as magic and creative as I could be in a different situation. Here, all of the big energy is happening beneath the surface. Whatever it looks like on the top, it isn't actually what it is in reality. It may certainly bear some relation to it, but it means that what is more powerful, what is more significant, is what is happening beneath the radar. So here we have a state of conflict, possibly, between you and another person. Could see that. But I think it's more likely, with it being you, Pisces, that it's actually conflict that you feel internally about the next move forwards, because it does seem that there's something bubbling away that seems like it might be a better option, a better fit than you know, trying to stick with whatever this is. But at the same time, it seems to be kind of needling you a little bit. And perhaps it's because it's not really in your nature to just leave people and things and situations behind, right? The energy of Pisces is all-encompassing, and it wants to embrace all, support all. But it cannot come at a cost of self. And that's the really, really important rule that I think Pisces has been learning since, well, probably since 2020, to be honest, but definitely since 2022. So we have the world here, which is talking about the end of a cycle for sure, but it's also talking about the acquisition of wisdom and how we have progressed through a cycle such that we are ready to tie it all up and start again. Remember that in the major arcana, nothing is linear. We may take a linear path through the Fool's journey, but ultimately when we arrive at the world, the next card is the Fool. If you end a cycle, there is always something new that is about to begin off the back of it. But let's just put that Fool over there for a second. So we have this sense that whatever lessons have been laid out for you in this cycle, you have understood them, you have taken them in, and even just the fact that you have noticed that this isn't for your higher good is probably the thing that's tipped the balance in favour of Pisces getting a gold star and saying, yes, well done, you have graduated, you get to move on to the next level. It doesn't mean that it's easy, and it doesn't mean that it won't come without its particular challenges in the transition from one state to another. But I would remind you that you are the High Priestess, and as such you rule that liminal place betwixt things, you know, ends and beginnings and whatnot. I like the fact that the Queen of Swords is here, because the Queen of Swords is objective, almost to a fault, actually. You know, where your energy is everything that I described before, and it's actually very diffuse, and it flows out from you like a mist and kind of envelops and shrouds everything. The Queen of Swords is much more to the point, literally like the end of a sword. She is taking everything down to a single point, and she's looking at things very, very objectively. Now, there may be things that are emotionally true but not factually terribly helpful, such as some, you know, of the conflict that you might be feeling about this situation over here. But she's always bringing it down to the essential point of, is it true? Is it helpful? Does it further what's going on here? You know, for me, the queens represent this this energy of making sense of stuff. So it could be that what you're finding at the moment is that you are trying to make sense of what you think about this, versus the feelings that are arising over and over again of, I must go in this direction, and that necessarily requires that I leave something else behind, whether it's a person or a situation, all that sort of stuff. Totally lost my train of thought there. Hang on. It'll come back in a second, because it always does. Apart from when it doesn't. Okay. So, Queen of Swords, objectivity, rationality, logic, all of these things. It's like making sense of the situation, whatever it is. And, was I talking about a cost? Maybe I was talking about a cost. I think I was. It's employing a level of objectivity that is not necessarily always associated with Pisces. And saying, I have learned that certain things need to be for my higher good, and not every single experience that I have or that I expose myself to necessarily equate to those things. So in this moment, as I feel that I am crossing the threshold from one cycle to another, as indeed this would suggest that you are, what do I choose to take with me? What do I understand? What are the relative values of everything that I've learned, of all the people that are involved, or all the situations that I'm in at the moment? Like, what is my highest good here? And we've got the Hierophant and the Sun. Now, what's quite interesting about the Hierophant, which is Taurus energy, that one there, and this one actually represents the 4 fixed signs. So we've got Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo in the corners of the readings. Those signs may or may not be relevant to you. Just know that it's kind of a fixed point of graduation, and this is why it's a fixed end to a particular cycle, moving into something new. This Hierophant, more fixed energy. Indeed, the Sun, more fixed energy, because that's Leo. The Hierophant for me is often about the combination of legacy and heritage, and these are the same messages that we get with the Ten of Pentacles too, one or two other things. It's like what has always been versus what can be in the future. Now, just because something has always been one way, it does not mean that it's immune to change. But what we don't want to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we have to make sure that what we're taking with us is what is helpful. What we have to take with us is that which grounds us, and is, acknowledged as valuable, but not the extraneous crap around the edges that has been, inputted by us possibly through our early childhood experiences, or earlier experiences, full stop. The funny thing is about the way that these cards are set out here is that I actually I feel very strongly that I want to do this. Now, the Hierophant has many meanings, right? It can also represent a teacher. It's quite literally, the Hierophant is quite literally from the Greek of meaning something along the lines of one who can divine the higher mysteries, right? The will of God and all that kind of thing, right? It's somebody who acts as a translator for these deep spiritual messages, and furthermore, because it's Taurus, right, it's the ability to be able to break it down into palatable chunks that can be understood by people. This is something that Taurus does exceptionally well across the board. So we have this kind of teacher, we have this kind of mentor energy, this really quite masculine, orderly energy of the Hierophant that allows us to teach. But we also have these other meanings of society and culture and hierarchy and all this sort of stuff. And it's interesting that I wanted to pull it away from the main cards and put it down here, because Taurus is the point at which our feet make contact as a zodiac with the ground, right? It is fixed earth. It doesn't get much more in the ground than this. And I feel like the way that all of these cards are kind of weaving together here, it feels like you are being presented with what you know to be an ending. And it's not very comfortable, but you know that it's the right thing for you. Maybe you're sort of toing and froing over that one, but ultimately deep down you do know that this is the signal to move on. But we've got some really strong cards of a particular foundation that you appear to have built for you, that is serving as the foundation for the next step forwards. Because, let me show you, for example, when I pulled these two cards up before, I put them side by side, and I spoke about the circle, the cycle of these energies. But I think a more accurate way to show you how this works is to have this card here. Because from here, the rest of the major arcana flow this way. And eventually, when we get from the Fool to the World card, then we'll go up a level again, right? There's this constant movement upwards. We're not really moving in a linear fashion when we're going from the Fool to the World. And certainly not when we're going from the World to the Fool. It's more like a spiral than anything else, a continuous spiral. So whatever has been laid down in this previous cycle for you, however long it may be. And for some of you it may be relatively short, we're talking like 5 years, something like that, but for others of you it has a feeling of being much more significant than that, like some sort of major life cycle coming to a state of completion. There may be physical representations of that. If you're female and you're of a certain age, then perhaps you have that sense of moving towards your cronehood because your body's telling you that's what's going on. For others of you, it may be the transition from maiden to mother, right? That trifecta of the 3 phases of the moon. There's a proper name for it, and I've forgotten what it is. The 3 fates, right? This transition from one state into another, regardless of whether you are moving from, like I said, maiden to mother or mother to crone or whatever, whether this is something that you can see happening outside of you, or whether this is some sort of psychological, emotional and spiritual shift, whatever you've been washing out over there needed to be done. But I do feel like it's stopping there as you then kind of come out from the laundry room, as it were, dry your hands off and go, right, I'm going over there now. I've got jobs, tasks, missions to achieve over yonder. This is the foundation that you have built for yourself. The Sun card is a wonderful card. It's numbered 19, as you can see. It's here at the top. If you reduce those numbers, or add those numbers together, you go from 19 to 1 plus 9 to 10 to 1. And I do feel like what is happening here is the moment where everything that you have been working on when it comes to a sense of self is crystallizing, so that you can put your needs first and know that this is the right thing to do, because you've been training to do it for quite a long time. Now, the Sun is also associated with optimism and happiness and a certain amount of vulnerability, trust. We see this in the White Horse. We see this in the Naked Child. You know, we've got a question of a certain amount of innocence baked into the card too. But it is also the light of consciousness. Sometimes it's your inner child, which we'll throw that in there too. And what we've got here is someone who has learned to ground themselves, which is no small feat for a Pisces at all, right? It's not your natural inclination. Someone who can apply themselves to the work that needs to be done, we see this here in the world, until it is complete. So we've got stamina and strength and all sorts of things. You know, all the characteristics of the 4 fixed signs now existing within you. Good foundation, joy, positivity. We're emerging out the other side of this cycle much more conscious than we were before. And then we move into September, and here is the Fool. Now, I think I made mention last month that some of you it wasn't exactly like you were treading water. You were busy and you were doing things and you were drawn towards doing particular things without really knowing why, but you were just kind of rolling with it. It certainly wasn't a situation, it certainly wasn't a kind of experience that was easy to relate to other people, because they just wouldn't understand it, and that's fine. It's not their job to understand it, it's your job. And maybe it's not even your job to understand it. It's just your job to do it, right? The Sun would suggest that you are starting to understand it, though. And we come in here and we have the Fool. We have everything that has been being prepared for over here. Because this does really feel like the last act of the old cycle, whereby you're like, oh, actually, do you know what? This doesn't work for me. And I feel comfortable enough in articulating that. Where comfort's probably stretching it a little bit. But certainly, you're prepared to sit with that conflicted sense of self until you establish what the lesson was here. And when it comes back to you, and that light bulb moment says, well, actually, this isn't working for me. I'm off. I'm going, doing something else. Here's the initiation of something new. Now, I love the Fool card for its representation of both trust and faith, and those two things that I think sit really deeply at the heart of Pisces. But also because of its endless, boundless creativity. Yes, in some ways the Fool is representative of utter chaos, and, you know, there's plenty of that flying around at the moment. But in the moment of the Fool, all things are possible. And the only thing that limits you, much like the exercise of the energy of the Magician, is how far you can imagine. What are the edges of what you can imagine? Well, that's probably as good as you're going to be able to get with something. But because you seem to have sailed to the top of the class and got this big gold star, it's just like, well done, Pisces, off you go onto the next level. Whether or not up until this point you have clearly understood where you want to go next, and I think for most of you that isn't the case. You've not really known where you wanted to go. You've not really known what was going on, but you were willing to sit it out, participate in it in your way, until the road ahead started to become clear. Now, the Fool in and of itself does not necessarily represent a clear path. The Fool is wandering for the sake of wandering, right? He's exploring. He's just being in the moment of being. But the Eight of Pentacles and the King of Wands give a very different structure. And I use that word advisedly. No, I use that word deliberately. Structure to what happens next. Because the Eight of Pentacles is about mastery, it's about commitment, it's about really throwing yourself into it at the exclusion of everything else, so that you become a master of whatever it is that you're trying to do. And remember, because it's Pentacles, and certainly the way that I read Pentacles is about energetic currency, like what are you investing in? Then it's not just about money, it's not just about your job, it's not just about your material possessions. It's like, what do you want to get really, really good at, Pisces? Because here is the path forwards for you. I mean, September is going to ask a commitment from you, but it's a commitment to something that isn't necessarily terribly clear. Now, for Taurus, that would send them into, you know, absolute paroxysms of agony. For you, it's a little less of a concern. And I do think it's because what you've been working on, which is balancing, if I can put it that way, balancing the spiritual and the material, right? Balancing the huge part of your life that is quite frankly incomprehensible to your average person. No, I really do. I have said for many, many years that Pisces is an extraordinarily powerful sign, and most people didn't notice that about them because it's not here right in front of us. It's not of the nature of Taurus. It's not of the nature of even, say, Aries, right, where you can recognize that there's a tremendous amount of power going into either planting your hooves and staying still or going to war, as in the case of Aries, right? Pisces power is very, very fucking different. Very different. But no less powerful, and perhaps even more powerful than those other versions that I just laid out. But that can be overwhelming sometimes. It can make it very difficult to exist in this world sometimes, when you've got so much input coming in from the universe, from other people, from whatever. Like it's almost like being in a complete state of overwhelm sometimes. Well, you learn to manage that. You've been balancing the material and the spiritual, the material and the emotional, yourself versus the world, which is to say everybody else. Realizing that you are one and you're a part of everything, but you also have a distinct edge around you that is yours. And part of your job here on this planet is to learn how to do things yourself, right? Without trying to blend like distinct pieces of fog together to create one bigger fog. The illusion of separation is exactly that, but the illusion is necessary in order that we actually achieve anything by ourselves at all. Like, these such things are not possible if we cannot perceive the edges of ourselves versus other people, right? It stops us being able to understand what is ours to do versus what is everybody else's. And I think the biggest issue for you, Pisces, for the longest time is that you felt like everybody else's was yours to do, particularly from an emotional perspective. So I like this a lot here, because this King of Wands and Eight of Pentacles energy is not something I think that you could have taken on readily without these experiences here that have grounded you, right? Created some sort of anchor point for you in this world here, without compromising what is so very important about the realm that you have a natural access to. I hope all of this is making sense. It feels right to me as I'm talking. The Fool can be an opportunity, but it can also be a release from all of the things that have kept you stuck, tethered, anchored somewhere you didn't want to be. The Fool is liberation and freedom and whatnot. But because there's a commitment that's being asked here from you, I don't think it falls into that, well, you're just being let go from this over here, right? It feels like there's something that you are needing to work towards, walk towards, commit to, that is showing up for you this month. And it is of the nature of something that's probably a little bit bigger than you were expecting. We've got the King of Wands here, again, more Leo energy, which is giving you the stamina and the courage to take on whatever this is. For some of you, it's going to be a job offer that you just simply didn't expect. An opportunity to move across, maybe to move across country, or move to another country, full stop. It's something that is not going to be an overnight victory, as it were. It's something to work towards, because we've got the initiatory step, but we've also got the indication that whatever this is, whilst exciting in the moment, is going to take a lot of hard work from you. And you as you are now, with what resources you have available, which is obviously not only a direct line to the spirit realm and all that sort of stuff, but also on the other side of that, balancing that out, a really strong, firm foundation, you can pull this off. You can actually pull this off in a way that might have been completely, I'm looking for a word here. What word am I looking for? Inconceivable just a year ago. But it's not coming in overnight. I remember reading for you last year, Pisces, and it probably would have been about this time last year. Maybe it's a little bit later in 2023. And so many Pisces were working really, really hard. And it was really interesting, because what was coming through in those readings was that there was some sort of commitment that you had taken on, and there had been the idea that this was going to be relatively short term. And what was coming out in the readings was that this was going to be much longer. It was going to take much more from you than necessarily you had planned for in advance. And I remember asking you the question, is it worth it? I also remember saying that for some of you it absolutely would be, but you needed to be aware that it was going to take longer to achieve it. It was going to be more stretched out. It was going to take more from you. But if you truly believed in what you were doing, then stay the course. For some of you, though, the juice really wasn't worth the squeeze. And I got a lot of feedback from Pisces saying that was exactly where they were at. And I think that in the intervening period, in this intervening year, you've worked so hard on yourself. You've changed and adapted so well. And you have really lent into what was incredibly alien to you, which is that ability to really root yourself in the material world, like ground yourself properly. That now the options that are open to you are of they're an order of magnitude bigger than you thought you could have taken on last year. I do wonder if in some ways for you Pisces, what was started last year by way of some sort of cycle, and maybe that's the cycle that's ending, is now coming to its completion. Like, without this intervening year, you could not have even contemplated the possibility of doing this thing over here. But now you can, and now you will. It definitely has that kind of quality about it, because there's a lot of hard work here. There's a lot of hard work here. But the hard work that you put in is, equal and exact to the amount of benefit that will come out of this. So ultimately it's down to you. We've got fire and fire here. Always about initiation, but stamina and pacing and going through something in a methodical way. Right? There's no airy-fairy thoughts about this, oh, it's fine, it'll be done in a month, or it'll be done in 2 months. Like, no, there is a long-term commitment here to something. But it does feel to me like it's the gift that you've been working for. Even if it relates in no way whatsoever to anything that you've been, practically involved in this year, the changes that have happened within you were always going to take you to the point where this was the thing that you could embrace. And the choice is yours, whether to accept it or not to. But I feel like since you've been in training for at least a year for this point right now, it's better to regret something that you have done than something that you haven't, because likely you're not going to regret this at all. It's interesting how over the course of the readings that I've been doing for September, I'm seeing this. Well, you and Aries seem to have very, very strong readings of starting something, whereas everybody else seems to be very much in the thrall of trying to clear up the mess. It's kind of like really classic retrograde energy, actually. But maybe like the consequences of the retrograde energy, where everything's got to be cleared up now. Once we've understood what the retrograde was about, we're doing it. For you and for Aries, it seems very, very different. It's that kind of gentle push to the front, like, go on, you two, off you go, start mapping it out for everybody else. I did say to Aries that I thought was interesting that their reading seemed to be so palpably different to everybody else's, because they seem to be setting something in motion that the rest of the zodiac would catch up with before too long. And the reason that I bring it up is because obviously you and Aries are sitting next to each other in the zodiac, but I do have an astrologer friend who believes implicitly that Pisces should be the first sign in the zodiac, because think about how the law of attraction works, right? You have to imagine the thing first. You have to be able to perceive the thing first, and then you take action on it. And you two seem to be not hand in hand because you're doing your own thing, but certainly there seems to be an energy that is feeding both of you, that is taking you towards something really quite spectacular in September. So I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to go and do the extended. If you would like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. But we're going to dig into September a little bit more. We know what's got you to this point. We want to know a little bit more about what's going on here. If you'd like to join me, you can do that on Circle. You can do that on Vimeo. I would be delighted to see you in either place. If neither of those are your bag, then just be aware that things are changing pretty quickly in September. I don't think that you will have any issue adapting to that change, because your foundation is really strong now, and some of you might even be able to smell it coming in on the wind, and just knowing it's on its way in that way that you high priestesses do, Amazing. All right, know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.